Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine giving everything you have to the people you love most, sacrificing your time, your energy, your money, and then being told you're no longer welcome. That's what happened to Emily. After years of quietly carrying her family's burdens, she thought this Christmas would be different. She had everything planned to make it perfect, to show her family how much they meant to her. But one simple message shattered her world. You're not needed anymore. The question is, how far will you go for family before you realize you're being used? And when that moment comes, what do you do with the wreckage of your love? As the holidays approach, Emily faces a choice she never imagined she'd have to make. Will she continue to sacrifice herself, or will she finally choose to live for herself? Stay with us to find out. Now, let's dive into Emily's story. Emily sat in the small, dimly lit apartment she had carefully curated over the years, the kind of place that spoke of quiet ambition and long-held dreams. At 36, she had learned to be content with her solitude, even if it occasionally gnawed at her. She had her routines, mornings spent organizing her finances, afternoons working as an accountant at a local organic food company, evenings curled up with a book or binge-watching a show on Netflix. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Her apartment, with its two modest bedrooms and mismatched furniture, was filled with the soft hum of a life she had built entirely on her own. Every corner held memories, from the old framed photos on the walls to the tiny succulent she'd rescued from a sale rack. Yet, there was something more, a secret she had been carrying with her for years, one that refused to leave her, no matter how hard she tried to shove it into the corners of her mind. It was December 23rd, and for the first time in years, Emily had planned everything perfectly for Christmas. She had meticulously wrapped presents for her younger brother Jake, his wife Sarah, and their two kids, Ava and Mason. She even bought a sweater for their dog, a red one that said Santa's favorite. She had learned to love the holiday, not for its commercialism, but because it gave her a chance to give, to show her family how much they meant to her. But this year, she wanted more. This Christmas wasn't just about the presents. It was her chance to finally feel like she belonged, to feel seen. The message came at 7:18 a.m. It was from her mom. Emily, this year Jake's family wants to celebrate privately. Please don't come. Sorry for the late notice. She read it once, twice, a third time. Each time, the words felt heavier. She thought it was a joke. Her mom had to be tired or upset about something. So she called. No answer. She called again. No answer. Then, a text from Jake. You don't need to come. There's no place here for someone who doesn't know their role. Her role. The words echoed in her head. She was frozen, staring at the pile of gifts that were now mocking her. The ribbons she had tied so carefully, the little handwritten notes she had crafted, felt like cruel evidence of her foolishness. Everything she had worked for, the perfect Christmas, the perfect family gathering, had slipped away like sand through her fingers. She had hoped that her presence, her thoughtful gestures, would change something. But now, as she stood in front of her parents' house, her childhood home, the place that should have been a sanctuary, she realized the truth. The door cracked open. Her mother stood there, dressed in a red sweater, her expression unreadable. I told you not to come this year, her mother said softly. Emily stood, unable to find her voice, her hands trembling as she held the bags of gifts she had brought. Jake's voice cut through the silence, cold and detached. Just say it, Mom. She's not welcome. The words stung like a slap to the face. Failures don't belong here, Jake sneered. Her heart dropped. What had happened to the brother she used to comfort? The one who called her in the middle of the night, terrified about school fees or car repairs? Now he saw her only as a walking wallet, a source of financial relief he could take for granted. It was then that Emily understood. All the money, all the sacrifices, had never been enough to earn her a place in their lives. She was nothing more than an obligation. And in that moment, she knew she was done. Done playing the role of the selfless sister. Done being the one who carried everyone's burdens. She turned away, the weight of rejection settling like an anchor in her chest. The drive back to her apartment was quiet. Snow fell softly outside, covering the streets in a blanket of white, but the coldness in Emily's heart was far deeper than the winter chill. She didn't cry. She had no more tears left. What could she cry for? A family that had never truly seen her, or for herself, someone she had forgotten in the service of others. That night, alone in her apartment, she unpacked the gifts, each one a symbol of everything she had tried to give them. She looked at the little wallet for Jake, the one with his name engraved on it. A wave of sadness passed over her, but it wasn't from the loss of family. It was the loss of herself. For years, she had lived in the shadows of her brothers' and parents' needs, convinced that if she gave enough, they would see her. They never did. Would you still sacrifice everything for the ones you love if it meant losing yourself in the process? Can love truly exist without respect, or is it just a one-sided transaction? As Emily stared at the gifts scattered on her table, she made a choice. She would no longer be the fixer, the silent rescuer. She would walk away from the false promises of family. She would stop pretending to be someone she was not, someone who existed solely to please others. But as she made this decision, she had no idea that the silence she had finally embraced would be shattered soon, and the truth would be much more painful than she could have imagined. The phone rang the next day. A lawyer? The twists of her family's deceit were far from over. The phone call came just as Emily had begun to settle into her new, quieter life. It had been 3 days since she had left her parents' house, since Jake's cruel words echoed in her mind, since she had finally confronted the truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years. The house felt colder now, but in a way, it was a relief. The emptiness was all hers, and for the first time, she could breathe without worrying about what her family needed from her. But as her phone buzzed with an unknown number, she froze. She had been ignoring calls from Jake, her mother, even Sarah. But this was different. The caller ID showed no familiar names, only a number from a law firm. A sudden knot formed in her stomach. With a deep breath, she picked it up. Hello? Her voice was steady, though her pulse raced in her ears. Miss Emily Spencer? The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Yes, this is she replied, now gripping the phone tightly. Who's calling? My name is Mark Dawson. I represent a client who has some concerns regarding financial transactions involving you and your family. Her heart skipped. Every instinct told her to hang up, to shut this down before it spiraled any further. She had made it clear to herself she was done with them, done with the manipulation. She wasn't going back. I think you should meet with me, Mark continued, unfazed. I believe you need to be made aware of something important. Emily felt her stomach tighten. It was happening again. Another person, another twist in the web she thought she had freed herself from. But curiosity tugged at her, that old familiar need to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Where do you want to meet? She asked, her voice low. The next morning, Emily found herself sitting in a small, understated law office. The faint hum of a heater was the only sound that filled the space, and Mark Dawson, a man in his mid-40s with short-cropped hair and a sharp suit, sat across from her. He slid a manila folder towards her, the soft rustle of paper filling the air. This is about Jake, he said, his tone steady, and your financial history with him. Your brother has been doing more than asking for help. Emily's stomach churned as she reached for the folder, already knowing where this was going. She had seen enough to recognize the familiar figures of her own bank statements, the countless transfers, the endless sacrifices. But as she flipped open the folder, the numbers blurred, and her eyes caught something that made her hands freeze. There, among the usual transfers, was a significant withdrawal, $5,000. Her pulse quickened as she scanned the accompanying details, a transfer to a mysterious account labeled JS Investments. It wasn't her usual account, nor was it linked to anything she had helped pay for. The truth slammed into her like a physical blow. Jake's been gambling with your money, Miss Spencer, Mark said, his voice firm. And it's not just once. There are several transactions here that indicate he's been funneling your financial support into his own untraceable accounts. Emily's mind raced, the world around her narrowing to the images before her. Her brother, the one she had trusted, the one she had thought of as the kid she had to protect, had been using her to fund his addictions, his lies. The truth was too much to bear. All those nights she had transferred money, thinking she was helping with their bills, their children's needs, had been for nothing but a game. She had been played. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. She couldn't make sense of it. She had trusted him. She had loved him. Mark paused, allowing her to digest the information before continuing. "Jake's wife, Sarah, found out about these transactions. She's concerned, and now she's wondering if you've been a part of something bigger." Sarah, the woman who had apologized to her after the Christmas debacle. Emily's heart twisted. Sarah, too, had been in the dark, suffering beside her, enduring Jake's lies without ever suspecting what he had been doing behind their backs. Sarah didn't want to go to court yet, Mark added. But she's not sure how much longer she can stay silent, especially now that she knows how much you've been involved. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The realization hit Emily like a wave. Sarah was finally waking up to the truth. But the more she processed it, the more she realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about the years of her life she had spent cleaning up messes, always in the background, always overlooked, always used. She looked up at Mark, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "So what now?" she asked, her voice stronger than it had been before. "Do you expect me to help them again? Do you think I'm still the person they can lean on?" Mark was quiet for a moment. "I think you need to decide for yourself what your role in this family is. No one can force you to carry them anymore." The weight of his words settled in her chest. He was right. For so long, she had defined herself by her role in the family, by her ability to fix things. But she was tired. She had carried their burdens, their shame, for far too long. As she left the law office, Emily felt like she was stepping out of a fog. She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't go back to being the person who was always there to save them. She had tried to be the hero, but all it had gotten her was empty promises and betrayal. The drive home was long, the streets covered in ice, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just been revealed. She hadn't wanted this, didn't want the truth to hurt so much. She just wanted to be seen, to matter. But now she realized something deeper. Maybe it wasn't about them anymore. Maybe it was time to matter to herself. As she parked in her driveway, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. "Is it possible to help someone without losing yourself in the process? Can love exist in a family without boundaries, or is it doomed to be one-sided?" Emily stared at the message, her hands shaking. She didn't know how to answer yet. But one thing was certain. She wasn't going back to the family she once knew. She was stepping into a new chapter, a new life, even if it meant walking away from the people who had shaped her world. And just as she reached for the door handle, she heard a loud knock at her door. It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't Mark. It was Jake. The knock on the door echoed through the silence of Emily's apartment, sharp and insistent, pulling her out of the fog of her thoughts. She knew who it was before she even opened the door. The weight of the moment hung in the air, thick and suffocating, like a storm just waiting to break. Jake stood there, his eyes wide, his face drawn with a mix of anger and desperation. He was the same as always, dressed in his worn winter coat, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, a cigarette still smoldering between his fingers. But today, there was something different in his eyes, something more calculated, something that made Emily's chest tighten. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice flat, the confidence he once carried replaced by a raw edge. "I was wrong. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Emily didn't move. Her eyes studied him, the brother she had once protected, the one she had always believed would be there for her, even when everyone else failed. But now, standing before her, he seemed like a stranger, someone she no longer recognized, someone who had taken everything she had to offer and left her with nothing but emptiness. "Jake, I don't think you understand," she said quietly, her voice steady but filled with years of pent-up frustration. You used me. You used me for years. And when I stopped being useful, you tossed me aside like I was nothing. Don't you see? This isn't about money anymore. This is about respect. And I'm done letting you take that from me. He looked away, the words seeming to hit him harder than anything she had said before. There was a flicker of shame in his eyes, but it quickly faded, replaced by anger. He stepped forward, his voice rising now. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to be the one who failed? You think I wanted to put you in that position? Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stood her ground. You chose this, Jake. You chose to lie. You chose to take everything I gave you, and you turned it into something dirty. You don't get to play the victim now. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words seemed to die in his throat. There was no more fight left in him, not this time. He was tired too, and for the first time Emily could see it. Maybe it wasn't just her who had been broken by this family. Maybe Jake had been broken long ago, and in his desperation to survive, he had dragged everyone else down with him. I'm sorry, he said, the words coming out so quietly she almost didn't hear them. I messed up. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make things right again. Emily's throat tightened. She had waited years for this moment. The apology, the acknowledgement that everything she had done for him, for the family, hadn't been in vain. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like closure. It just felt empty. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I can't fix this for you, Jake, she said, her voice trembling just slightly. I can't keep carrying your weight. I've carried it for too long, and I'm not doing it anymore. He looked at her, his eyes pleading, but she could see it now, the helplessness, the recognition that things were beyond repair. I'm sorry, he repeated, the words hanging in the air between them like a finality neither of them could escape. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the silence stretch between them. When she opened them again, she felt something shift within her, a release, a letting go of everything she had held on to for so long. She didn't need to fix him. She didn't need to fix anything. She only needed to save herself. Goodbye, Jake, she said, her voice clear, no longer filled with the emotion that once threatened to consume her. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be here with me. He didn't say anything else. He just stood there, his hands still trembling at his sides, as she closed the door gently in his face. Emily sank to the floor, her back against the door, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight that had been pressing on her for so long, the guilt, the anger, the heartbreak, began to lift. Slowly, it started to feel like she was breathing again, like she was finally coming back to life. She had been lost for so long in the role she had played for everyone else, but now, for the first time, she was just her. The next few days passed in a blur. Emily didn't answer her phone. She didn't respond to any messages. She simply existed. She spent her evenings cooking meals, journaling, rediscovering the parts of herself she had buried for so long. She even picked up a ukulele, something she had always wanted to learn but never had the time for. It was small, insignificant, but it was hers. And for once, that was enough. Then one morning, as the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, Emily received a message from Sarah. It was brief, but it stopped her heart. I left him. We're starting over. For the first time in years, Emily felt something that was almost like hope. It wasn't just for herself anymore. It was for Sarah, too. For the kids. They were starting over, just like Emily had. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was a second chance. As the days passed, Emily's world shifted. She began to find peace in the small things, watching the snow fall outside her window, sitting with a cup of tea in her hand, smiling at the person she had become. She was free now, free from the weight of other people's expectations, free from the guilt that had weighed her down for so long, and it was a kind of freedom she had never known before. But the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Jake. It wasn't Sarah either. It was her mother. Emily, I don't know what to say, her mother's voice cracked on the other end. I should have known. I should have been there for you. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. She wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive or if she even could. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to fix it. She didn't need to carry their burden anymore. "I'm done being the person you need me to be, Mom," Emily said softly, her voice steady. "I've spent too long trying to please you, trying to fix everything, but I can't do it anymore. I have to live for me now." Her mother was silent on the other end, but Emily knew something had shifted, even if they couldn't fix everything. She wasn't going to be the one to save them anymore, and that was okay. Have you ever reached a point where you had to choose yourself over family? What did it take for you to let go? If you were Emily, would you have walked away, or would you have tried to fix things one more time? The silence of her apartment was soothing now. No more expectations, no more pressure. Just Emily, finally learning how to be herself. And as the snow continued to fall outside, she closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "This is how it was meant to be." Thank you for reading this story on Life Stories. If you felt something, leave a comment with 100 if you enjoyed it. Where are you watching from? Share this video with your friends if you think they'll relate. Your thoughts mean a lot to us.